Welcome back to Whole Bible Study with Taddy Noy, and we're continuing the discussion with Exodus chapter 2. If you just joined me for the reading and the deep dive, excuse me, of Exodus chapter 2, then you know this chapter is packed with both action and subtle divine movement. But as always, there's even more below the surface. In this follow-up episode, we'll look deeper into the historical context, cultural nuance, and theological resonance of this chapter, especially around the identity of Moses, the Midianite connection, the literary structure, and how Exodus 2 fits into the larger biblical narrative of divine calling. So let's jump in. First, the subversive birth story. A Hebrew archetype of resistance. The birth of Moses echoes a common ancient Near Eastern literary pattern, one that often includes a hero with divine favor, but in the biblical version, it's infused with subversive meaning. In many Mesopotamian myths or royal inscriptions, the birth of a king is marked by cosmic signs or divine declarations. In Exodus chapter 2, however, there is no thunder or prophecy, just a desperate mother who sees that her child is good. This quiet, humble framing reflects a major theme in Torah theology. God often begins his most powerful works through the unnoticed, the humble, and the endangered. Historically, this would have been politically risky literature. A story where women, Hebrew slaves no less, outwit the ruler of Egypt, and where God's future liberator grows up under Pharaoh's nose. That's a radical narrative. This tells the oppressed that deliverance is already gestating, even when the empire seems unstoppable. And two, the Egyptian setting, politics, power, and polytheism. Exodus 2 occurs during Egypt's New Kingdom period, often dated to the 15th to 13th centuries BCE. While scholars debate which Pharaoh ruled during Moses' time, many place the story within the reigns of Thutmose I, Seti I, or Ramses II. Regardless of the exact ruler, the setting reflects Egypt at the height of its imperial strength. But here's what's fascinating. Egypt, in its own self-perception, was the land of order, Ma'at, surrounded by chaos. Pharaoh wasn't just a political leader, he was believed to maintain cosmic balance. So when the Israelites multiply and resist assimilation, they are not just annoying outsiders. To Egyptian ideology, they are chaotic threats to the divine order, the world order. Thus, Pharaoh's decree to kill male Hebrew infants isn't just population control, it's a mythic defense of cosmic balance. When, from Pharaoh's theological point of view, but the Torah flips the script. It's Pharaoh who's violating order, and it's the Hebrews, specifically women, who become the true preservers of life and divine justice. This reversal is core to the biblical theology. God subverts the claims of empire with quiet, faithful acts. Now the role of women. There are 5 women in Exodus 2 who drive the entire plot. Moses' mother, his sister, traditionally identified as Miriam, Pharaoh's daughter, and the 2 Midianite sisters who later tell Reuel about Moses' help at the well. In a patriarchal world, it's astonishing that every major movement in the chapter is initiated by women. They act with courage, cunning, and compassion without a single male intervention. Until Moses kills the Egyptian, scholars often point to this chapter as an early example of biblical feminist subtext, where the preservation of covenant and justice comes through the maternal and moral instinct of women acting on behalf of life. More than that, the narrative parallels Genesis 3 in reverse. Whereas Eve's act led to exile from the garden, these women's choices lead Moses into a place of calling. Now for Moses and the theme of exile and identity. Let's spend some time on Moses himself. This is the beginning of one of Scripture's most complicated characters. Moses is born Hebrew, raised Egyptian, and becomes a fugitive in Midian. He doesn't fully belong anywhere. He's too Egyptian to be trusted by his own people, as seen in verse 14, and too Hebrew to remain in Pharaoh's household. This displacement isn't just personal, it's prophetic. Moses is the prototype for Israel, called out, set apart, and always living between home and exile. His flight to Midian continues this pattern. The name Gershom is a Hebrew wordplay, Ger-sham, a stranger there. In naming his son, Moses is marking his identity as an alien in a foreign land. That theme will later be echoed in Israel's wilderness journey, where they too become strangers dependent on God. Now for some interesting information, a mysterious connection between Midian and Reuel. One of the least explored elements in Exodus 2 is Moses' connection to Midian and his father-in-law Reuel, also known as Jethro. Midianites were descendants of Abraham through Keturah in Genesis 25. They lived east of the Sinai Peninsula. This means that Moses, unknowingly or not, marries into a Semitic priestly lineage that predates Israel's covenant at Sinai. Reuel is called a priest of Midian. Scholars debate what that meant. Was he a worshiper of Yahweh? Or did the Midianite religion include fragments of earlier Abrahamic faith? Some believe Reuel represents a priestly figure who preserved elements of the original worship of El Elyon, the Most High God, before Israel received the law. This connection sets up future chapters where Jethro will advise Moses on judicial leadership and even offer sacrifices to Yahweh. It's as if God is already hinting that his covenant reach extends beyond ethnic Israel through lines and people that preserve his ways in obscurity. Now for some literary context of Exodus 2. Hebrew narrative is economical but precise. Exodus 2 is a brilliant literary structure. It begins with birth and preservation, moves through violent justice, and ends in exile and waiting. That arc mirrors the coming story of Israel itself: birth in Egypt, deliverance through Exodus, exile in wilderness, and ultimately a new identity. The final verses, where God hears the Israelites groaning and remembers his covenant, serve as a hinge for the entire book. They echo Genesis 15, where God promises Abraham that his descendants will be enslaved for 400 years, but he will bring them out with great possessions. In Hebrew, the verbs here are layered. God hears, shama. God remembers, zakar. God sees, ra'aha. God knows, yada. Each of these words becomes a theological pillar. God is not absent. He is intimately aware. Now, many theologians, a little extra things on Moses. Many theologians see Moses as a type of or foreshadowing of Christ. In Exodus 2, the parallels begin to form. Both Moses and Jesus are threatened with death and at birth by a wicked king. Both are saved through divine protection and human obedience. Both leave privilege, palace or heaven, to identify with the oppressed. Both meditate between God and humanity. The New Testament makes this link explicit, particularly in Hebrews and Acts, but it starts here, in a basket, in the reeds, in an Egyptian palace, in the wilderness of Midian. The shape of Moses' story will eventually become the template for redemption itself. Now for some closing reflections. As I sit with this chapter, I'm struck by how the stillness of God isn't absence. It's preparation. While Moses is growing up in Pharaoh's house, God is laying the foundation. While the Israelites are groaning in pain, God is listening. There's a sacred rhythm to this part of the story. Human choices, divine timing, hidden deliverance. And in every movement, there's a quiet whisper, I see you, I hear you, I have not forgotten. If something stirred in you as you listened, if you noticed something that I didn't mention, I'd really love for you to share it in the comments. We're walking through this together, and your insights matter. Thank you for sticking with me. This is a long journey through the scripture, and it's my honored walk with you. See you in Exodus chapter 3. There's things where things begin to really heat up, literally. So may you be blessed with the peace of knowing that even in the wilderness, God has not abandoned you. Have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow in chapter 3.